This is part 2, episode 59. Ling Yushu had a flickering expression as Qin Mu was right about his worry. Ji Yulinwan was the teacher of the Crown Prince when he was young. The Crown Prince was older than him and occupied the position of the Crown Prince. If one could say that there was a world difference between a royalty and a commoner and the difference was as vast as the sky and the earth, then one could also say the difference between a Crown Prince and an Imperial Prince was as vast as the sky and the earth as well. Ji Yulinwan would definitely not give him face, and on the contrary, he would deliberately create trouble for him. He could confirm this for sure now. I won't interfere with the matter between you and Ji Yulinwan. Ling Yushu came to a decision and said, but you must be careful, the way Ji Yulinwan handles things is not like the previous Grand Chancellor. He doesn't have the breadth of mind for the long-term influence of a solid education. Qin Mu nodded his head and said, don't worry. Ji Yulinwan will at most create trouble for me and not dare to go overboard. Ling Yushu had a weird expression. Qin Mu seemed to be talking too big. Where did his confidence come from? Could he and seventh sister have already? A bad thought floated up in his mind. If he becomes the emperor's son-in-law, there was indeed no need for him to be afraid of Ji Yulinwan. Ling Yushu was silent for a moment and said, I plan to leave Imperial College and head to the borders to lead my troops. I'm the general of roaming cavalry and have an official position on me. Furthermore, I've also reached the age to lead the army. However, I'm just worried about my seventh sister. Qin Mu assured him, don't worry, second prince, there's me. The corners of Ling Yushu's eyes twitched as he thought to himself, that's exactly why I'm worried. Qin Mu chatted with the siblings for a moment before rising to bid farewell. I just came back home from a trip and have yet placed my luggage down. I have to return to Scholar's residence first. Ling Yushu sent him out of Royalty's Park and kept silent for a moment before saying to Ling Yushu, Academician Qin's frame of mind is not like a youth. He sees things very clearly and will definitely be a very capable person in the future. His words earlier struck the bottom of my heart. Ling Yushu burst into laughter and said, who says he's an adult? He doesn't even know anything and even says I'm chubby. He doesn't even know how to say appealing words. Ling Yushu shook his head and said, I'm going to write a letter to father and leave Imperial College. I can't be a scholar anymore. Now that Ji Yulinwan has become the Grand Chancellor, he most likely won't give you a nice look. If you can't stay in Imperial College any longer, you can follow me to the borders. Ling Yushu nodded her head, don't worry, second brother. If I can't stay here any longer, I'll definitely go find you at the borders. However, I still want to cultivate along with Chancellor Ba Shan. Ling Yushu looked at her and knew exactly what she was thinking, but he couldn't say anything and could only shake his head. Qin Mu returned to Scholar's residence and the huge dragon Qilin followed behind him. On their way back, most of the scholars in Scholar's residence gazed at them with envy. Yun Q came up with a smile and said, Sister Fox, I have earned enough money. Can I redeem my clothes back? Hu Linga took over the coin pouch and gave it a press before nodding her head, wait for a moment. I'll go get it for you. Yun Q was full of thanks. Hu Linga returned to the house to get his clothes back while shouting out, those that owe me money, quickly take your money out to redeem your certificate of indebtedness. After a moment, a few scholars came over with resentful expressions to redeem their certificates of indebtedness. Hu Linga was very satisfied and said, next time you get beaten by young master, I can give you 20% discount. A scholar shook his head, Imperial Academician is a 6th-ranking official, who dares to challenge him? Hu Linga was stunned for a moment before turning her head to tell Qin Mu, young master, we lost our source of income. Our whole fortune is going to be eaten up, and we can't raise this big fella anymore. The dragon Qilin pulled his head back and muttered, a liter of scarlet fire spirit pills each day is also fine, as long as there's something to eat. Qin Mu consoled, don't worry, I can raise you. That's right, do you have some saliva? Give me a bottle and let me see if I can exchange it for money. Hu Linga fetched a jade bottle over and collected a bottle of dragon's saliva. Qin Mu kept the bottle safely and instructed them to stay home while he went to Hall of Supreme Healing. The few old imperial physicians were researching prescriptions in the hall and were all delighted when they saw him. Little divine physician is finally back. What spirit pill do you plan to make today? If it's an anesthetic or poison, please warn us beforehand. Qin Mu greeted these imperial physicians and said, I'm here to find imperial physicians to test a medicine. After he had said that, he took out a small jade bottle. When the few imperial physicians saw this small jade bottle, their expression changed hugely. Imperial physician Yu asked with a trembling voice, I recognized this bottle. Is it another anesthetic? Nope, it's a healing panacea. When Qin Mu said that, Imperial Physician Yu took out a small knife and hesitated for a moment before giving a slice on Imperial Physician Ding's arm, causing the fresh blood to flow out. Imperial Physician Ding went into a fury and was about to blow up when Qin Mu hurried forward. He opened the jade bottle and applied a little dragon's saliva on the wound, only to see the wound heal immediately and returning to its original state within a few breaths' time without even having a scar. The few Imperial physicians were astonished and they immediately gathered forward. Imperial Physician Yu asked, to what extent of injuries can this healing panacea cure? Can it reattach broken limbs? Qin Mu nodded his head, it can. There was a person who got severed from the waist and I had used this medicine to reattach his body, returning it to normal. However, this medicine only acts as a support, the tendons and nerves still need to be manually reattached, which puts one's technique to the test. Imperial Physician Ding glanced to the side and saw Imperial Physician Yu raised his knife again and immediately shouted, if you dare to chop me, I'll poison your whole family. Imperial Physician Yu couldn't do it and went out of the hall. After a moment, he brought a scholar in. All the Imperial physicians immediately shook their heads and Imperial Physician Yu stomped his feet in anger. Old Yu, are you mad? Even if you want to test medicine, you can't chop his limbs. That scholar broke out in cold sweat when he heard it and immediately ran away. Imperial Physician Yu wanted to catch him back and was immediately blocked by the other Imperial physicians. You can't, you absolutely can't. Scholars are 8th-ranking officials, you're going to face a lawsuit if you chop their limbs off. Daoist Ling Yun has a crane that had fought with Chancellor Ba Shan's green cow a few days ago and got her leg broken by the green cow. You can fetch that crane over and sever her leg to reattach it. Imperial Physician Yu went out again and brought the crane back after a moment. Imperial Physician Chu clamped the crane's beak, making the crane indescribably terrified and unable to struggle. Imperial Physician Yu followed the injuries and severed the leg off. The few Imperial physicians cleaned up the shattered bones and waited for Qin Mu to treat it. After a moment, Daoist Ling Yun barged in and was about to blow up when he saw Qin Mu reattaching the crane's broken bones before reattaching the muscles and nerves, clearing the bone marrow. Daoist Ling Yun didn't dare to say a word and waited until Qin Mu had finished reattaching the leg, only then did the Imperial physicians loosen their restraint. That crane immediately stood up and moved her leg around in astonishment. She expressed her thanks to Qin Mu sincerely with a loud and clear voice which belonged to a little girl. Qin Mu wrote down a prescription and handed it to Daoist Ling Yun. Brew medicines on this prescription and boil some water to soak her injured leg. It can help stimulate the nerves and channels, removing any hidden damages. Daoist Ling Yun saw his crane recovering and couldn't help being surprised and delighted. He immediately took the prescription and expressed his thanks profusely with a smile. You beat me in front of the Emperor, and I had still borne some grudges before. Now I am even grateful to you. Qin Mu smiled. Don't fight, won't make friends. Daoist Ling Yun kept feeling this sentence was a little awkward and used in the wrong circumstances, but he didn't brood on it. He immediately called his crane over and headed to the warehouse to grab the herbs. Qin Mu smiled. Imperial physicians, how much does this bottle of healing medicine worth? I'm recently tight on money. The few Imperial physicians were surprised and delighted. Imperial Physician Yu said, Little Divine Physician wants to sell? It has quite a considerable value. This kind of healing medicine is even more precious than any natural treasures to the soldiers on the battlefield. I reckon it would be worth 10,000 great abundance coins. Qin Mu was astonished and said, even faster than Fan Yunxiao robbing people. What? The Imperial physician didn't catch what he said. Nothing much. Qin Mu smiled. I can refine a bottle out every day and sell it of Hall of Supreme Healing for 10,000 gold. How is that? The Imperial physician's eyes lighted up and they looked at one another. Imperial Physician Yu said, that would naturally be the best. Qin Mu was satisfied and took his leave. The white heads of the few imperial physicians huddled together, and Imperial Physician Chu said, "We're getting rich?" All the imperial physicians nodded their heads, unable to contain their excitement. "Old Yu is still the wise one. This small bottle of healing medicine isn't worth just 10,000 gold. We can easily earn 2 times the price by selling it." Qin Mu walked out of Hall of Supreme Healing and returned to Scholar's residence when a voice suddenly came from behind him. "Little bald donkey, where's your Kakara staff?" Qin Mu stopped and turned around to look at the elder in purple behind him. With a smile on his face, he bowed. "Student meets Grand Chancellor Ji Yu." This elder in purple was Ji Yu Linwan, and the 9 coat of arms was nowhere to be seen on his purple robes. It seemed like he had taken off his first-ranking official robes and changed into third-ranking official robes. Ji Yu Linwan gave a wee smile and walked toward him while speaking leisurely. "When you scammed my junior protector sword, did you expect the day would come that you would land in the grasp of my hand instead?" Qin Mu shook his head and said, "What is Grand Chancellor saying this for?" Ji Yu Linwan gave a haughty smile and stretched out his hand. "Hand it over." Qin Mu shook his head again. "I never return the things I scammed." Ji Yu Linwan gave off a fierce gaze, and Qin Mu was not scared at all. "I'm now a 6th-ranking official and the Imperial Academician that was appointed by the Emperor himself. Empress Dowager's illness was cured by me. If you touch me, the Emperor will execute your whole family." Boom! The devil chi around Ji Yu Linwan went into a turmoil and formed a 1,000-feet devil god behind him with murderous looking. That 1,000-feet devil god solidified the surrounding air and seemed to even warp the space as well, making this devil look warped like the blazing noon sun scorching the ground as it stared fiercely at him. Qin Mu smiled and asked, "Does Grand Chancellor still have anything else?" Ji Yu Linwan said coldly, "If I want to kill you, I won't have to do it myself. You also won't dare to do it." Before Qin Mu could say anything, a voice sounded behind Ji Yu Linwan. "If you touch my junior brother, there's no need for the Emperor to execute your whole family. I'll execute your whole family." Ji Yu Linwan's body froze and he felt as if there was an unbreakable knife at his neck. He chuckled and said, "Chancellor Ba-Shan? You want to stand up for this little bald donkey?" Chancellor Ba-Shan stood behind him with his chest wide open and his 2 knives rattling non-stop behind his back. Without any expression, he said, "Old Ji Yu, you have not appeared for 200 years, your path, skills, and divine arts are already behind times. Do you need me to give you some guidance?" Ji Yu Linwan suddenly laughed out loudly and his body vanished as he turned into devil chi. With his voice coming from afar, he mocked, "Give me guidance? Except it was heaven knife here." Qin Mu turned around and suddenly saw a knife chi breaking through the air to chase that devil chi. Chancellor Ba-Shan always likes to fight and must be delighted to see a prey. "I reckon he's going to fight with Ji Yu Linwan. What a pity I can't catch up to them." Qin Mu sighed and returned to Scholar's residence. Just as he entered the door, he heard Hu Linger's voice sounding out, "Young master, we have a visitor." Qin Mu entered the door and couldn't help being stunned when he saw a middle-aged man waiting in the courtyard with hands behind his back. "Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned around and his gaze landed on him, the sacred cult master of Heavenly Saint Cult. Who would have thought he is the first Imperial Academician of our Imperial College? How interesting. Qin Mu's mind trembled hugely as he walked into the courtyard. Imperial Preceptor didn't come over just to talk about interesting stuff. "Linger, watch the tea." Hu Linger immediately said, "Young master, our house has no tea, you don't drink tea." Qin Mu laughed and said, "Buy and prepare some tea in the future. Since we have no tea, watch the seats. There are only a few broken stools in Scholar's residence. Where do we have seats?" the little fox grumbled. Qin Mu was slightly awkward. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor waved his hand and smiled. "No need to trouble yourself, I'll just say a few words with Cult Master and I'll leave." Qin Mu's gaze landed on his face. This appearance of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, the #1 man under gods that awed the world, couldn't be said to be extremely handsome. He only looked ordinary, but there was an indescribable flavor to his face. It was the type that the more you watched it, it grew more and more pleasing in your eyes. His eyes stood out the most on his body. They were eyes that were filled with wisdom and seemed to carry a little sparkle in them, watching over everything in the world to make the wisest decision. To this eternal peace imperial preceptor, Qin Mu had a favorable impression and was filled with admiration to this pioneer who broke away from the old conventions. For Eternal Peace Empire to be what it is today, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has a higher contribution than the Emperor. Taking charge of the reform to reform the army and the government, to break the view of sects, to break the barrier between the three big sects by establishing primary schools, colleges, an imperial college, to set up an institution for scholars, this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has made this generation become exceptionally wonderful. Even though he admired him, Qin Mu still had criticism and resentment to this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was not only gifted by heavens, he was also ruthless. He sent a punitive expedition to Great Ruins, and even though he beat a retreat in the face of difficulties, it didn't mean he won't do it the next time. He suppressed all countries with armed force and annexed them. To uproot those that opposed him, he faked that he was severely injured to bait those sects who had already acknowledged their allegiance to rebel, causing the people to be in a terrible situation. This was not a perfect person. From the beginning to the end, Qin Mu couldn't see what this man was trying to achieve. His breadth of mind was vast and could clearly show tolerance for the whole world, yet he had to extinguish other countries and invade Great Ruins so as to gain more land for Eternal Peace Empire. He clearly had no lust for power, but he didn't hesitate to raise a bloodbath just to eradicate those that opposed him. To Qin Mu, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was like a contradiction. It was very difficult to guess what he was thinking. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also sizing him up, and after a moment, he said with a gentle voice, "The Sacred Cult Master or Heavenly Saint Cult is unexpectedly young." I was also shocked when I had received news that the Sacred Cult Master was actually the Imperial Academician of our Imperial College. You didn't seem surprised when you saw me. Qin Mu said, "Heavenly Saint Cult provides education for everyone, irrespective of background. Therefore it's natural that Imperial Preceptor could place a few men among the higher-ups of Heavenly Saint Cult. I'm not surprised Imperial Preceptor could discover my identity so quickly." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. The Sacred Cult Master of Heavenly Saint Cult should have this kind of wisdom. However, how did you not panic when you saw me? Aren't you afraid I'm here to kill you? If Imperial Preceptor wants to kill me, there's no use even if I panic. Qin Mu said, "If you don't kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. If you kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult will rebel. My life is not as valuable as Heavenly Saint Cult, so Imperial Preceptor doesn't have the need to kill me. Therefore there's no need for me to panic." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled, "Don't be so sure. It's good to be smart, but you might guess wrong if you're overconfident. However, you had indeed moved my heart. You said Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. Can you tell me the reason?" Qin Mu said, "We have the same philosophy, so there's no need to rebel." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "I've heard the first thing you had done after you became the Cult Master is to establish the 361st Hall, to set up School Hall?" Qin Mu nodded his head. "I'm imitating Imperial Preceptor to reform Heavenly Saint Cult. Heavenly Saint Cult was originally an empire draped with the name of a sect. If you imitate me and reform Heavenly Saint Cult, won't it become the empire within the empire in my eternal peace?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked, "If it was during times of peace, you guys would definitely not rebel, but if the world is in chaos, why don't you guys take this chance to rise up and overtake as the Orthodox?" The reason why Heavenly Saint Cult didn't rebel in this period of unrest is not that we don't want to overtake as the Orthodox, and is because the current Eternal Peace Empire is a large-scale Heavenly Saint Cult. Qin Mu smiled, "Why do we have to rebel ourselves? In that case, when will you guys rebel?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor became interested and asked. Qin Mu solemnly said, "When the time comes for Imperial Preceptor to betray the philosophy of Heavenly Saint Cult and no longer to carry out the path of the Saint, that's the time Eternal Peace Empire would no longer be Heavenly Saint Cult, and my Heavenly Saint Cult will definitely rebel." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave him a glance while exclaiming, "What great guts you have." Qin Mu said, "This isn't great guts, I have to tell the truth because Imperial Preceptor will know if I lie." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor slowly walked to the well in the courtyard and said at a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow, you came from great ruins and have no foundation in heavenly saint cult. I originally planned to control you and let you borrow my power to establish yourself in heavenly saint cult. However, I no longer have this idea. Qin Mu walked to his side and heard Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continuing, people like you are dangerous. Those who have their own ideas are usually very dangerous and give people a headache since it's very difficult to convince them. Convincing a person is the most strenuous thing and it would be better off by simply killing them. To convince a cult, that's even more strenuous and it would be better off to eradicate them. No matter if it's Tao sect or Great Thunderclap Monastery, they have their own philosophies and it's very hard to convince them. It's the same for Heavenly Saint cult. He kept silent for a moment and said, luckily the philosophy of Heavenly Saint cult and the philosophy of Eternal Peace Empire don't conflict. Qin Mu was curious, Imperial Preceptor won't touch Heavenly Saint cult for now, what about Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery? That would depend on what they do. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said seriously, let's see if they could achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge. If they could carry out their ideas and achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge, I will do everything in my power to get rid of them. If they can't do it, it isn't hard for them to live on. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly and asked, what's Imperial Preceptor's philosophy then? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head, I have no need to tell you. Don't look at what I say, look at what I do. My philosophy is in my actions, this is, knowledge is action and action is knowledge. Young Sacred Cult Master, you still have a long road to go. Qin Mu still couldn't see through this person. Qin Mu, at the current stage, still could not debate over the philosophy with people like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyesight was too high and his knowledge was too vast and too shrewd. His understanding of the paths, skills, and divine arts had reached such a level that people could only look up to him. Qin Mu was not yet at this level. He couldn't think through Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's thought and didn't know if he would be a friend or foe. However, as for now, Qin Mu had to plan for Heavenly Devil Cult's future as the Sacred Cult Master. As for the internal strife in Eternal Peace Empire, our Heavenly Saint Cult would fully support Imperial Preceptor. Qin Mu carefully thought of a way to express his words, however, I need a promise from Imperial Preceptor. After quelling the rebellion, would Imperial Preceptor eradicate our cult and burn the bridges? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned to look at him and replied, I won't. Qin Mu gave an expression of inquiry. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said leisurely, I need encouragement. Leaving Heavenly Devil Cult means I'm leaving a sword hanging over my head, spurring me and warning me that I can't make any mistake. He gave a smile, if I'm too strong, even I made a mistake, what people could do to me. I need a power which can kill me when I lose my Tao heart. Heavenly Saint Cult is very good. If I go against your philosophy, I'll be waiting for you to kill me. Qin Mu was slightly frightened. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a step and left. Qin Mu let out a murky breath and felt his hairs almost exploding out. There was only one thought in his mind, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor isn't a human. Non-human. As long as it's a human, it would have 7 emotional states and 6 desires, it would have thoughts of selfishness. Yet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't have 7 emotional states, 6 desires, and totally no thoughts of selfishness. Without these things, he was a human no more. Or perhaps, he could be called a saint. Could Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor be a saint? He composed himself and drove away the thoughts that plagued him. At this moment, the dragon Chelin spoke with a low and muffled voice, this person is very terrifying. He stood here and I could see him, however I couldn't feel him. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He did not use Green Heaven's eyes to take a look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and lost a chance. He had once used Heaven's eyes to look at Village Chief and he saw a magnificent and imposing god that had an intact body. If he looked at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, what would he see? Outside Scholar's residence, Qin Feiyue was bowing and waiting outside as Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked over and said, let's return. Qin Feiyue didn't dare to say much and while they were walking, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor suddenly said, Grand Chancellor has good judgment. Qin Feiyue smiled, Gu Linwan might be not bad, but after being sealed in ice for 200 years and not moving forward, I'm afraid he might be behind times. I meant the other Grand Chancellor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned his head back and said, the successor he has chosen is very good and showing great promise. However, he's very like me, and it made me slightly uncomfortable seeing this person as I kept thinking of killing him. Qin Feiyue didn't understand what he was saying. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked further and further away while muttering, I hate looking in the mirror. The me in the mirror is never as perfect as the me in my ideals. In Scholar's Residence, Qin Mu could finally be at ease. His unity technique was yet perfected, and he had to calm his heart down to comprehend it attentively, perfecting it as much as he could. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave him a very big impact. A person who fights for his ideals always gives a charm that makes people admire from the bottom of their heart. As for Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor saying that leaving Heavenly Devil Cult meant leaving a sword hanging above his head, to achieve this step it was very difficult. Even with the combined power of the entire Heavenly Devil Cult, they couldn't achieve this step. Since Imperial Preceptor is so heroic, we have to fulfill his wish. Qin Mu executed his technique and slowly walked in the courtyard. He comprehended the unity technique he had created from the foundation of Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique in detail and sorted them out. He also took out great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures from time to make some referencing. After quite some time, Qin Mu let out a murky breath and his speed suddenly increased. He sprinted frantically throughout the whole mountain and executed the unity technique which he had comprehended out. His body flitted back and forth the mountain like flickering light and passing shadows. This video will end here.